Is the Invictus Games quickly descending into the Harry and Meghan show? That's abundantly apparent as Meghan Markle finally shows up in Düsseldorf, and the Invictus Games splashes out this huge series of pictures on her, and of course all the stands go crazy. And I was looking at that and thinking, okay, I'm confused. Is this supposed to be about the veterans, or is it becoming the Harry and Meghan show? Because I think it's starting to lean more into the Harry and Meghan show, and that is a huge problem for the Invictus Games. If you want to support the veterans, if you want to support soldiers, you need less of the Harry and Meghan show and more of the Invictus Games itself. And I think there's a series of really troubling things in the future for the Invictus Games that it needs to address right now, or at least as quickly as possible. Otherwise, it really does risk becoming obsolete in a couple years. People will tune out, people will go on, and perhaps the whole thing will collapse under Prince Harry's feet. And I'm going to tell you why I think that is and how the Invictus Games can start to remedy this situation, because it's really starting to spiral out of control. But if you guys haven't been to Royal News Network, my name is Brittany and I provide you all compelling royal commentary. I share some of the latest news and just a little bit of the drama going on behind the scenes. And I would love to have you back. So if you're interested in any of that, feel free to hit that subscribe button, the notification bell. I also have a fashion channel and a newsletter. And I am so excited as well because this week I will be in Sweden for the King's Golden Jubilee. I am so excited. So I'll be covering a bit of the Invictus Games as things come up with Harry and Meghan, but mostly it'll be about the Swedes. Hopefully we will have a couple of TR events. I have press credentials and access to some of those events, not necessarily the TR ones. I really hope so. But I am so excited, guys. This is my first royal credentialed event, so it'll be really fabulous. And I'm so excited to share with you guys a bit about this and hopefully getting you guys more interested in like the Swedish royals and the Danish royals and the Norwegian royals. There's so many great royal families out there. I also have a video on the Norwegian royals. If you want to know a little bit more about the family, I do have that video there. I would love to share with you, so feel free to, I think I'll put it up here or there and so you can check it out. It should be really awesome. We also have Catherine recently visited a prison to learn more about how men in that particular prison their addiction issues are being addressed. So it's a really wonderful opportunity for her to learn more about this process. Obviously, addiction has been a huge passion project for Catherine and William as well. They've both also been invested in mental health issues, and obviously addiction and mental health kind of go hand in hand. We also have the German-speaking royals meeting together. Ironically, none of the royals from Germany, although they are now ruling, so I understand. We have King Philippe and Queen Matilda of the Belgians. They are hosting everybody there in Belgium. We also have Grand Duke Henry and Grand Duchess Maria Theresa from Luxembourg, and Heredity Prince Elios and his wife Sophie from Liechtenstein. Yes, it's a lot of words, It's kind of funny because the two small kind of well-known principalities that both start with L in Europe are both attending, which is rather interesting, but obviously none of the German royal families. This week I have been in Germany and Austria, and I have visited some of the locations for the Bavarian royals and the Habsburgs, and so we saw some of those places. So unfortunately they are no longer ruling, but we did get to see some really fantastic sights. Okay guys, back to Harry and Meghan. So I wrote out this whole thing on Twitter, and I think I'll probably post it after I film. This won't go up until tomorrow because I don't have time to edit, and the internet here at the place I've been staying at is super slow, so I'm hoping the next place is better because it took, I almost want to say 12 to 24 hours for the last video to upload. So, and we've had connection issues, and there's no AC here, so it's very steamy and hot. So if you see me glistening, no, it is obviously how hot it is, and I turned the fan off so I could film because last time you could hear it in the background. So anyways, I am hot. But let's get back into the Invictus Games, and particularly the lead up to it. So we have Meghan Markle going to In-N-Out Burger, and I will say 100% right now, this was a completely set up shot with a long range camera. I actually did a little short where I showed you guys my big camera that I have. I'm filming with another camera here on the stand. Guys, it was completely and totally a staged picture with a big camera. This was not, somebody kept going, well, it was an iPhone. iPhones take great pictures. Yeah, of like certain things, but not like details. They're not great detailed cameras. They're really not. And I know Apple's coming out with a new camera. We'll see how it goes. But if you want the clarity they got in the shot of Meghan, you have a long range lens. And you also have that, it's clear that some of the employees are moving out of the way of the picture. And so you can tell that person probably had a big camera, because big cameras, they draw attention. I've taken my camera out a couple of times while I'm here, and people look at it and go, nice camera, or they're like, big camera. And I'm like, yeah, it's a big camera, guys. It's a big camera. But I got it for Sweden and I'm so excited. Yay, because I didn't find out until I went on this trip. So I invested in a new camera. And so the question was, would I get to use this new camera? Turns out I have, and I invested in new lenses. So very, very exciting things. So anyways, we have this whole situation with Harry and Meghan. So Meghan went to In-N-Out Burger, and obviously a hugely set up shot. And then we also have shots of her going to the airport in LAX. Again, how would they know unless somebody told them where exactly she would be at LAX? LAX means that she flew, I believe, probably on a commercial airlines. I can't see her going to LAX for private. I think private runways around Los Angeles are where usually private jets take off. And she was wearing expensive clothes. She had her Hermes scarf, her vintage Goyard bag, because now we're getting intimate details about Meghan's wardrobe from Victoria Ward of The Telegraph. Why? It remains unclear. Because again, it's acting like royalty when you're not really royalty. It's just very, very confusing messaging. So Meghan's landed in Düsseldorf, and of course, we get shots of her leaving the airport, and then we get shots of her arriving at the Invictus Games. And what do we also get? Oh, she's wearing Banana Republic. Look at that. She's thrifty. And she's doing her own hair and makeup this week, guys. Oh my gosh, we should all be so impressed with the studiousness and the thriftiness of Meghan Markle. And you look at all this, and she's giving this speech and everything, so go ahead and take a listen to a little bit of this here.
So I'm really, really proud to be a part of this Invictus. I am thrilled that the first event that I can do for Invictus is here with all of you. It is amazing, and I hear the week so far is not off to a good start, is that right?
Now, as I go through all this, yes, people seem to applaud. There were some pictures that came out, and I will say, I love shirt dresses, so I don't mind Meghan's dress, but she buttoned it as if she was going on a date, not to a charity event. Two different scenarios, Meghan. Just putting that out there. Got a little low. You could see her bra. Not really all that appropriate. But as we get this huge cavalcade of attention to Harry and Meghan at the games, and particularly Meghan, it raises a lot of very interesting questions about the future of the games and what's actually going on behind the scenes. Because I think the games are in a kind of a precarious state, and Meghan Markle is not helping matters in the slightest. Because number one thing to remember is that if you look and search down through the comments on the Invictus Games profile with Meghan's picture splashed on there, a lot of the comments are talking about, oh, this is what I was waiting for, this is why I watched the games. And so it's like, okay, you can tell a lot of them are Sussex stans. Now, obviously, you can like something, that's fine. If you like Harry and Meghan, I question your taste, but hey, you are welcome to have the thoughts that you do, not taking that away from you. But it's also evident as well that the people who are watching the games, who are obsessively tweeting about the games, are often Meghan stans, not really people supporting the games. They're supporting the games because of the connection between Harry and Meghan, not because they actually like and support the games. And so it's this way for them to feel good about themselves, good about Harry and Meghan. Oh, look, they're so successful here, yada, yada, yada. And so they have to promote it because this is the way they're able to show how much they love Harry and Meghan and how great Harry and Meghan are doing and how much they're contributing to the world and all these sorts of things. But what happens when Harry and Meghan divorce? Because I imagine a lot of these stans who love Harry and Meghan, love the games, will all of a sudden dissipate and disappear because their focus really was on Meghan and not the games. And I think there's a reason for that. One of the biggest ones is that the Invictus Games, it's unclear whether this is an event for the soldiers or if it's a personality exhibition for Prince Harry. Because I think the Invictus Games is leaning too much into the personality and person of Prince Harry. Now, obviously, sometimes, yes, that happens with certain charities and those sorts of things. But the problem is that if that's all you're focusing on, is that if that's the direction you're going, then if Harry missteps or Harry does the wrong thing or if people aren't as engaged with Harry, what happens to the games? Because if it's built around a personality, not a competition, that means that personality goes away, something happens to that personality, then all of a sudden these games that everybody's worked so hard for will begin to slowly crumble and dissipate. And I think that's already beginning to happen. So we do know that Land Rover and Jaguar have pulled out as sponsors of the game. They were there last year and they were there for pretty much every game except for this latest one. You could wonder why there's a close connection between Range Rovers and the royal family. So you could say, well, they decided not to do it because they didn't want to tarnish their relationship with the royals. I understand that. But I also wonder as well if they're questioning their participation in these games and if their money is really going into a black hole. Because when I noticed some of the group shots and everything of the games, it looks like the stands are pretty empty. And I think the only people who are there are family and friends of those competing. Now, to be clear as well, I think the Paralympic Games don't have a huge audience either. And this is very similar. So I understand why a huge audience wouldn't be there. But I think the problem Harry is having and why they didn't think this through as the Invictus Games is that when you're bouncing from city and country to country, there's not really a draw for people to go to Düsseldorf. Who's going to Düsseldorf? Like when people go to Germany, they go to Berlin, Munich, they go to, maybe Dresden. Like there's the Nuremberg. There's a couple of really big historic cities, Hamburg, that people generally go to. Why are people going to Düsseldorf? What is the draw of the general public to attend Düsseldorf games? Now, what's interesting to notice as well is that when it comes to tickets, they are selling tickets for the opening and closing ceremonies, but not the rest of the competition. Now, it could be that, yes, Amazon covered all of it out of the goodness of Amazon's heart, because Amazon's the ones covering the quote-unquote ticket price. However, I think the real problem is they can't sell the tickets. And so because of that, they're leaning more on Amazon to offset that loss. Because even if you are a charity, if you have an event like this, it needs to generate some sort of income, either through donations or through the games itself. And I don't think it's doing that, because when it comes to the games in Orlando, I was there, and obviously it was a great thing because you could go to Disney World, you could go to the games, you could pick and choose. And I remember the other competitions being something you had to pay for. You had to pay for the opening and the closing ceremonies and all the competitions in between, because it was something where me and my sister had some more time, so they're like, oh, let's go see swimming. I thought swimming was personally rather dull. I hate to say it, but I didn't really enjoy it that much, and so I was like, well, okay. But sitting volleyball was actually really interesting. I really did enjoy that. But that was when Harry was at his peak. That's when the hype was the biggest for the Invictus Games, and it made sense to have it in Orlando because there was a draw of people, and there was an audience, a broader audience that would be willing to go. People on vacation were going, well, hey, we're doing the park these couple of days. Let's do this another day. We need a break from the parks. Let's go and support our troops. But that's not going to happen. It also helps the soldiers because they're like, hey, we can go, not only can we go and participate in these games, we can take our kids to Disney World. They're going to love it. And so there was a huge draw, I think, to Orlando. I don't think the same thing exists in Düsseldorf. And I don't think the same thing will exist in any other of the places Harry is taking the Invictus Games. And yes, I think they do have sponsors from Boeing and Amazon, and I think they have a lot of military sponsorships as well. And the reason is that it looks good for the military officers, it looks good for the service teams, and so they're like, hey, yeah, let's support the Invictus Games. It's an easy win. But the reason that Boeing and Amazon, let's look at them in particular, are supporting the Invictus Games is because not only does it fit in with, they get a tax break for it, they get some benefits for it, but they're doing it in the idea that enough eyes will be on it that they'll see the Boeing logo, they'll see the Amazon logo, and they'll go, okay, we need to go back to Amazon, I need to order something from Amazon, oh, I like Boeing, let's invest in Boeing, something like that. But I don't think that's going to happen because I don't think enough eyes are on it. Yes, it's generated some publicity, but not that much. And I think they're overestimating the value. And so because of that, I think sometimes they put their focus and attention on Harry and Meghan. But there's a severe drawback to that. And number one is that Harry and Meghan are both very, very divisive figures. People either love them or hate them. There's not really much in between. And so to put all your eggs in the Harry and Meghan basket, especially as their star continues to fade, is a really, really bad idea. And also goes into the thing of overindulging in the personalities of Harry and Meghan in order to sell the games. And the sad thing was, and the great missed opportunity that Harry made, is that he could have made the Heart of Invictus documentary something to expand on the games. Instead, people tuned out because it was too much on him. It wasn't, I don't think, storyboarded well. And so there were compelling bits, but you had to drivel through all this other somewhat boring stuff or things that really apply to what the games are supposed to be. Because in the Invictus Games documentary, I thought it was weird that one of the soldiers was injured in a car wreck, not in combat. I mean, nothing against him playing in the Invictus Games at all, but if the Invictus Games, the purpose of it is in part to help those who have been injured in combat, everybody who was featured should have been injured in some sort of combat or in some sort of military role. That they were not, I thought was confusing. And another guy they covered, and granted, again, I missed the beginning part of his story, so I will be totally honest there, but when I was listening to him, it just seemed like he had more of an attachment disorder and other psychological issues that were more pressing than what he experienced in combat. Like what he experienced in combat magnified the fact that he was basically, it sounded like, abandoned by his parents. And so those confusing elements, I think, are really, really damaging the Invictus Games, because it's like, I don't know what we're supposed to support about it. And if Harry wants the Invictus Games to go on, which I really think he does, he needs to really, really focus on what these games are supposed to stand for. Are they for the soldiers? Or are they a platform to support Harry and Meghan? Are they a platform to capitalize on Harry and Meghan, to promote Harry and Meghan? If it's that, there's a really, really big problem, because at some point the rubber's going to meet the road and the games aren't going to be able to continue because you put too many eggs in the Harry and Meghan basket. Meghan is already, again, probably one of the most divisive figures in the public realm today. And yes, she has her stands. And yes, Harry and Meghan stands tend to make a lot of noise. But I don't think they're converting that well. And I think if Harry and Meghan, or when Harry and Meghan get divorced, I think all those people who were screaming from the rooftops about how great the Invictus Games was will completely abandon it once Harry and Meghan divorce. I think that's what will happen. And here's the thing as well. If so much of it is being driven by the Sussex stands, that's a really, really big problem for the Invictus Games in general, because I came across a little bit of that. I got a little bit attacked and piled on by the Sussex stands. And one of the things that was interesting is, as I was looking through my likes, because I was monitoring my Twitter a lot, I noticed that the Düsseldorf Invictus Games, what seemed to be basically their public profile, had liked a comment that was negative about me personally. And if you don't like my channel, fine. That's totally fine. But if a public organization or a public facing part of it is piling on and attacking people who don't like Harry and Meghan, what does that say about the Invictus Games? What is the Invictus Games? Is it the Harry and Meghan show, or is it about the veterans? I think everybody is confused anymore. And I even posted that to the Invictus Games. What are these games about? Because you don't seem to know. Because you're leaning so much on them. Because I think they know that the Harry and Meghan stands are the ones that are fueling parts of it. And if that's when it's going to happen, then two things the Invictus Games needs to do to address it. They either, number one, is they need to figure out what to do with Harry's patronage. Yes, I think Harry can be a part of it. He can still be a part of it in the future. But if it's about his personality and him personally fueling the games, I think at some point people will just drop out. And I think as time goes on, we're already seeing that. I think the crowds are getting smaller. And if it's only family members and friends going, at some point they won't want to go. So if your whole business plan revenue is based on corporate sponsors, because the corporate sponsors want the tax break and they want to promote things, but they can't because you're not getting enough people in, they will abandon it. And if family and friends are the only people who are generating money for it by going to the games and spending money on concessions, and they slowly start fading away because it's becoming too much, it's becoming too much of a burden, you're changing it every year, it's hard for us to travel, all these sorts of things, then people again will naturally begin to back out. And as that crowd and as that group dwindles, you're still focusing your flame on Prince Harry. Prince Harry, the guy who didn't know the cost of combat until he was on an airplane heading home. That ain't gonna work. And so the Invictus Games, what it has to do is either eliminate Harry as a patron in terms of taking the patronage away from him, or it needs to rein him in. It needs to figure out how to beat the games without it being Harry's savior complex. Harry thinks he's the savior of these people, so that's where his focus is. That's what he wants people to focus on, is how great he is. But that's not gonna sustain the Invictus Games. The other big problem is Meghan Markle, because she seems to think of it as a way to promote herself. She's promoting herself via the Invictus Games. And again, that's confusing people. And if you have all of her stands buying into her, then once she leaves, or once the relationship is severed, I mean, she's still not wearing her engagement ring. She's still wearing her pretentious pinky ring. It doesn't make a ton of sense. It seems to be that there were a lot of reports about problems in their marriage this summer. Well, then at some point, if she backs out, then what is the Invictus Games left with if it put all the eggs in her basket to help promote it? Because once again, I've said this time and time again, Harry and Meghan generate a lot of noise, but not a lot of conversion. The people who are saying, yeah, I want to support the games because of Meghan and Harry are probably going to be the first to leave. Now, you could say I'm not watching the games, I haven't covered the games that much, and I haven't. I was thinking about it, and I cover more royals, not kind of always the project they're doing. And also, as well as, I'm not a big sports fan, guys, I'm really not. I want to support our soldiers, and I want the Invictus Games to continue. But the Invictus Games is becoming too much about Harry and Meghan and too little about the soldiers attached to it. We saw this even in the documentary, The Hearts of Invictus. What were the first 10 minutes about? Prince Harry. What did he do to the Invictus Games? Well, I mean, he founded it, which is great. He stole the idea from somebody else. I mean, but I'll give him his props. He still helped bring this together, but there was a lot of royal connections. And once again, you have the large problem of these games. It's being unclear what the purpose is now, because when Harry and Meghan were royals, they weren't getting a kickback from it. But now that they're not royals, are they getting a kickback from the games? Are they making money from the games? Those are huge, massive, glaring questions that must be answered. Otherwise, I think the Invictus Games will eventually fall flat on its face. And honestly, I don't think a lot of people are that interested in it, except for the Sussex fans. I think Sussex fans and bots are what's driving a lot of the Invictus coverage right now. And yes, Meghan Markle will bring more eyes on it, but are they good eyes or are they critical eyes? And I don't think the Invictus Games knows the difference. And the Invictus Games should be the first to rein in and go, okay, let's not make this Twitter post solely about Meghan Markle with a microphone telling people about how she wishes her kids were there. I don't think that resonates with anyone because her kids have no connection to this. We have no connection to her children. Why do we care if her children are there or not? So Meghan and Harry have a lot to answer for here. And if they want the games to continue, they really need to look at themselves and figure out a way forwards where their participation has been minimized quite a bit. But I just don't think they can do it because they're too obsessed with promoting the brand of Harry and Meghan at the expense of the soldiers they are meant to serve. So guys, let me know what you think of this video. Thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.